I really hope I'm not going to be moving cross country anytime in the near future, because once was plenty for at least a decade. Hi everybody, we just moved cross country from Napa, California to the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. My husband is getting transferred for work and I work for myself so I can bring it with me. We are in our new house currently. As of the filming of this video, our truck hasn't arrived yet, so I'm in my kitchen. It's echoey, I apologize for that, but I still wanted to take a minute here, sit down and talk about some of the things that I really loved during the course of our cross-country move, and two things that I thought I would rely on that I didn't use at all. Consider this to be a favorites video, just with the context of moving cross-country with two cats, driving 18 plus hours over the course of 4 days, staying in hotels, including staying in a hotel for almost a week after we get here, because we didn't get into our house until the end of that week. So that's your context. I'll leave my moving playlist up above if you would like to see more from all of the adventures leading up to this point. But in the meantime, here are 10 things that were extremely helpful for me moving cross country with cats, and 2 things I thought I would use the shit out of and I didn't. First of all, walkie talkies. Now, this was something that my husband and I discussed, especially after a friend of ours had just made the same trip. And our friend mentioned that there were multiple dead zones for cell phone coverage during the drive, which we expected. A lot of our drive was through the deserts of Nevada. But Jesse and I were caravanning. We brought both of our cars, so we were both in a car driving, each of us with a cat. Our teenagers are flying out here, the lucky assholes, at the end of July, so they didn't have to deal with it. But that meant that if we needed to communicate with each other, we needed something in case we couldn't rely on our cell phones. So we found these walkie-talkies. They have both push-to-talk and they had voice-activated technology. And I will tell you right now, that was probably the best purchase that we made leading up to our trip. Not only were they fantastic in areas where we had no service, but honestly, it was much easier to just use the walkie-talkie than to call the other person. It was safer in terms of driving. It was better in terms of leaving our music on. It just was better overall. They were so helpful. And if you are going on any sort of caravanning long road trip, I 10 out of 10 recommend. The ones that we got were relatively inexpensive and they worked great. And we're gonna hang on to them now that we're in a bigger house with multiple floors. I'm thinking we might just use them all the time now. The next thing on my list was just a straw tote bag that I bought from Target. I was looking for something that had the capacity to hold all of my work shit, the things that I expected to bring with me that weren't gonna go on the truck. So it held things like watercolor paper and my bullet journal.
Sorry, I need a beverage.
That's fine. You need cold beverages.
I'm exhausted. I'm a blind.
You woke up in the middle of the night to hang out with the cats. You've been sleeping really well the last couple of days, and then suddenly you had an overnight adventure.
Fair enough.
It held my paints, the pens I brought with me. It was just a great size for that, but still malleable enough to kind of get shoved into the crevasses around all the big boxes of things that we carried. It was not inexpensive. It was like 40 bucks, but I'm pretty sure I will use the shit out of it. And I also would like to make the side note that I did say I wasn't buying any more tote bags, but I packed all of my tote bags and I needed something. So it worked, it's cute, and I will definitely use it again. Even if I use it as a grocery bag, it would work really well as like a big old basket to bring to the grocery store. Number 3, something I talked about in my Power Sheets video for August, is my Spotify playlist. I do a lettering challenge every single month that so many noises from my neighborhood. I do a lettering challenge for my patrons and for those of you who follow me on the Instagram and on my website for lettering practice every single month. And for the past few months, I have decided to do Spotify playlists with song titles as the challenge prompts. I listen to the shit out of them on the drive, especially my barf dancing jams, Dancing Like Barf in Spaceballs, and my Sings in the Car jams, which makes sense because those are the songs I like to sing along with in the car. I thought I would listen to audiobooks, I thought I would listen to podcasts, but I probably spent maybe a 10th of my time driving listening to those things, and the majority of it rocking out to my Spotify playlists. So I will link to my profile on Spotify if you want to go take a gander at all of the ones that have been made public. The next thing, the thing that I bought and then we didn't think we were gonna use, and then we wound up using it, and then it wound up saving our asses. It's a big old sack. It is actually a big bag that is meant to go on your roof rack, and you strap it down, and it's like a rain resistant situation, but it's meant to, like, as opposed to one of those hard cases that you can put on top of your car, it's a soft situation. We didn't want to spend the money on a big hard hard case because we didn't know how often we would use it after we moved, but we did get the sack because the sack was less expensive, and holy shit, it was helpful. We filled it with our clothes, with pillows, with blankets, basically everything soft kind of went into that. It freed up so much space because we didn't just pack enough clothes for the 3 or 4 day drive, we packed enough clothes for 2 weeks, like so that we would last until the moving truck got here. And we weren't like, we could still wash them, but like we needed a lot of room, like more room than you would expect for 2 weeks worth of clothes for 2 very tall people. So having that sack on top of my car was very helpful. The one note here though is that it absolutely destroyed my gas mileage, probably in combination with how full my car was, but between how full my car was and having the thing on top to add to the wind resistance, my gas mileage dropped. And so we had scheduled every 2 hours or so stops so we could stretch our legs. It wound up being where I would just top my tank off every 2 hours because I couldn't trust how much gas I would have to the next spot because my car doesn't have a very big gas tank. To go along with my big sack, my packing cubes, which are one of my favorite things when it comes to traveling because it keeps my suitcases relatively in order. For this trip, we didn't pack our clothes in suitcases. As I said, they went in the aforementioned sack. But what we did wind up using the packing cubes for was to pack the clothes specifically for our drive so that it was easy to find them when we had a hotel room loaded up with all of the shit that we unloaded from our cars each night, because we didn't want to leave them out there and make it obvious we were traveling and have people break into them, especially because Jesse had a lot of guitars in his car. So having all of the clothes portioned out for our drive, easily accessed in the packing cubes, was an outstanding thing that I thought of. The next thing on my list is a clip, like an iPhone mount for your dashboard. I don't really like the ones that stick to things, whether they stick to your windshield or they stick to your dashboard, because I have found that when it gets hot, no matter how awesome they say that they are, they wind up falling off. The one that I have is one that Jesse found. It's by the brand iAudi, I believe, and it goes like a flat situation that slides into your CD player if you've got one, and then it holds the phone in front of that, which worked out remarkably for keeping my phone obvious so that I could keep an eye on my GPS and easily change the song on Spotify without being unsafe and looking too far away from the road. It wasn't that expensive, and it probably was one of the best safety-oriented things that I got, as well as something that made the drive a lot more convenient for me, although I stopped using it the 3rd day of our drive, and I will explain that in just a second. If you haven't been watching all of my Instagram stories, or if you haven't seen my moving playlist, then you may not know that on our 2nd day of driving, when we left Reno, Nevada to get to Salt Lake City, we left Wells, which is a town closer to the eastern border of Nevada, and my car air conditioning stopped working. It started blowing only hot air. Now, a week previous, I had had my car in the shop for a week to get a different air conditioning problem solved. So when my air conditioning stopped working, you can imagine that I was like, well, shit. I wound up putting the other cat, my traveling cat, Lulu, in the car with Jesse and Loki so that Lucy wouldn't get overheated. And I drove through 2.5 hours in the Salt Lake desert on a 110-degree day with no air conditioning. And we got to Salt Lake City, stayed there an extra day, tried to get the car fixed, couldn't find anybody who could take the car. And so we decided to slice through the knot by buying another car, trading in the old car, getting a new one. Now you might think, what the fuck, Cindy? But we had already planned on buying an all-wheel drive vehicle when we got to Denver. The only reason we hadn't done it before the driving trip was because California and used all-wheel drive vehicles don't generally, we couldn't find any. And in Salt Lake City, there were multiple. So I was like, well, why don't we just trade the car in and get the car we were intending to get and just do it now? And my husband was like, And then we called his dad, who's really good at talking us out of harebrained schemes. And his dad was like, that's actually a pretty good idea. So we did that. So I had a 2010 Rogue. We traded that in, and now I have a 2020 Rogue that has Apple CarPlay. So I didn't need the iAudi clip anymore, but Jesse could use it. I love my new car. And not only did it save us on the drive the rest of the way, but it is super helpful to have here, and it will be helpful especially when I'm learning how to drive in the snow for the first time. Thankfully, I have a husband who grew up in New York and knows how to drive in the snow. I also want to mention that buying a car while you're on a moving trip is an absolute privilege, and it is not something I take lightly. I actually talked to my grandma on the phone for a while about what my parents would have done in the same situation, because my parents never bought a car that I even knew about. They just got cars like fourth hand from family members, and they broke down all the time, and we would just be shit out of luck till we could find another one. And my grandma was like, your dad would probably find a way to buy a car and like hella percent interest just to get out of dealing with it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, good to know. The point is that I'm not trying to brag on buying a new car, but as completely beyond the pale as it sounds, it actually made the most sense in the situation we were in. Turning completely from that to something for my cats. Tiki cat sticks, S-T-I-X. They are gravy treats. They're basically, this sounds so nasty, Go-Gurts, except they're cat gravy. Like not gravy of cats, gravy for cats. The ones we have are salmon and gravy, tuna, and then chicken. And they come in these little packs, and they are just chunky ass little gravies, and my cats adore them. And Loki is in kidney failure, having trouble eating right now. He loves these gravy things, and Lulu loves these gravy things, and they were the perfect thing to not only sneak Loki his blood pressure meds every day, but to sneak them both the sedative that they were gonna be on when we got into the car and drove all day. And honestly, I don't know if the sedative helped, because they both cried most of the way. I only wonder, would they have cried harder? I can't imagine. Whatever the case may be, these gravy sticks, my cats love them, and they were the excellent vehicle for smuggling things into them. This next thing might be kind of silly, but I already told you my parents didn't have a lot of money. Like, we were scraping by my entire childhood, and I was born in 1980, so I am a true child of the 80s and 90s. And one of the things I really wanted as a tween in the early 90s was a caboodle. I wanted one so bad. My parents couldn't justify buying one for me. I don't blame them. Well, they made a resurgence, and I needed something kind of sturdy to hold my makeup for the drive. Normally when I travel, I have like a little small amount of makeup I bring, but this was like a lot of my makeup because we're moving, right? So I was like, this is my opportunity to get a caboodle. Hi, kitty. He's rolling around at the top of the stairs he wants. I don't know if you can see him up there. He's rolling around trying to get my attention. I'm almost done, dude. I've always dreamed of getting one, so I was like, this might be excessive. But honestly, it worked really well for holding all of my makeup. It fell out of the car multiple times because it was always shoved in last, and my makeup was fine, and it was fine, and now it's under my bathroom sink, and I'm not sure how I'm gonna store it from now on, but I have a caboodle finally, and it was great for the move. And I could imagine using one as like to hold art supplies. I should get another one. No, I shouldn't. No, Cindy, don't buy any more stuff. The final thing I wanna mention here on my list of favorites before I tell you about the two things I didn't actually use is, it's actually a truck stop called Love's. I'm sure you might have heard of one. I had never been there before, but we found one in Wells. As a matter of fact, that's where we went right before my air conditioning stopped working. And I was excited because they had sandwiches and like fruits that were like, they were already peeled clementines, so they'd be easy to eat if you were driving. And I was like, perfect, now I'm not gonna get something salty, because good God, if my kidney disease ankles were the size of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man for like the whole trip because of eating salty, hi buddy, eating salty foods and being altitude changes and being in the car and all this other stuff. So I just wanted to eat something better for me, and Love's had that. They were so nice there. And not only that, but those mandarin, the clementines, the pre-peeled ones, saved my ass while I was driving through that hot desert with no AC, kept me hydrated along with the water I was drinking. And it was just delightful to just grab a cold clementine and put it in my mouth without having to do anything to it. There should be more Loves everywhere. There should be Loves everywhere. They're the best truck stop ever, and and we went to a pretty sketch-ass truck stop in Wyoming before we found the Loves there, and it was funny. The sketchy one was terrifying. It felt like something out of A House of a Thousand Corpses or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then we get to the Loves, and it was crowded, jam-packed. And I heard a guy saying that the reason why is because every other truck stop in Wyoming on that route of 80 is sketchy, and this is the one people come to because it's nice. So you go Loves, you have a new fan. All right, now I've told you some of the things that were really helpful on our driving trip. There are two things that I went into it thinking I would use the shit out of, and I didn't. The first one was my bullet journal. I had space in here for to-do lists. I haven't put anything in that until, what do you see? I put something in that in one hotel room when I was brainstorming a work project, and then I just started making to-do lists this week, which is the first full week we're in this house, to get done before the truck gets here. That's it. I have barely touched my bullet journal. It's not that it is not useful to me. It wasn't useful to me on this trip. Everything I thought it was gonna do to help me didn't really help me. I really relied on my phone and my iPad for all my information. And yeah, sorry bullet journal, you were not helpful. And the other thing that wasn't helpful was my Kindle. I thought I'd be reading my Kindle in the hotel every night, but I was either too exhausted to read anything and just turned on the hotel TV and passed out, or I just read it on my phone because I was too exhausted to go dig my Kindle out of the bag that it was in and the charger to make sure it was charged. I have the Kindle app on my phone, I just use that. Like, I think the thing I learned, and maybe this is the tip that I can give you for these two things that weren't as helpful to me, is that if you can't access it easily and you can't just, and it's not like super simple for you to use and you're on a trip like this, you're probably not gonna use it. So don't worry about bringing it. Pack it the other way if you need to. That's my thought process. Like I could have put my Kindle on the moving truck and been just fine. Probably not my bullet journal. Maybe my bullet journal. Probably not though. The point is you pack a whole bunch of shit to bring with you on a trip like this because so much of it's not gonna show up until the moving truck gets here. But you're gonna either pack not enough stuff or more than you need. Like right now, I could have easily traded my Kindle for a spatula. No lie. And those were 10 things that worked out great for me and 2 that didn't so much on my cross-country move. Like it's not the whole country, but cross some country move from Napa to Denver. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on them in the comments below. I would love to hear one of your favorite road trip items in the comments below. Like what is one of your favorite things? I should also mention, it's not on my list, but an honorable mention was finding a hydro flask that was wide mouth so I could put the straw on it, but it would fit in my cup holder. I usually use the gigantic honker one, but having the skinnier one made my drive safer. So this is an honorable mention. The point is, let me know what one of your favorite road trip things is, whether it's an item, whether it's a playlist, whether it's a meditation practice, I don't fucking know. Just let me know one of your favorite things in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, peace.